Hello and welcome to Tillin' It Like It Is, UGA Extensions, in Southeast Georgia's newest source for local, unbiased, research-based information about Georgia's number one industry, agriculture. We are coming to you again from Dallas, Texas at the National Association of County Agriculture Agents annual meeting. And if you're new to the pod, my name is Blake Carter, F&M County A&R agent. And with me, I have my co-host, Savannah Tanner, the Emmanuel County A&R agent. And we will be having fellow agents, specialists, and some of our own community members as guests to share updates, perspectives, or share their stories as it relates to agriculture in and around Southeast Georgia. Thank you for joining us for this, our third episode, Something in the Orange. We want to say two disclaimers. One, Zach Bryan, as cool as it would be, is not a guest on today's episode. So if you thought that and you came here for that, I apologize. He is not affiliated with UGA Extension or this podcast whatsoever. And if you did think you were about to hear a live performance, well, we have something much better in store. And we have a better guest than Zach Bryan here with us today as we focus on updates surrounding a growing industry in Georgia, citrus. Before we get into that, we do have a few matters to talk about. Savannah is going to start us off with our first segment, our What's Growing On. So, Savannah, what's growing on around our area?
So, really the biggest part, one of the biggest parts of our job as an extension agent is what is this weed, right? And so it doesn't matter what commodity or crop or loan or home that these are in. People want to know, A, what is this plant? And B, how do I get rid of it? And a lot of times when that happens, I will be sent a picture that you can't really tell a lot about the plant. And so it'll be... you can't really do a whole lot with that, right? So if you don't know what it is, you can't treat it. And so the last 3 weeks, I probably have gotten 8 or 10, whether that's in forages, whether it's in home loans, or another one right now is ponds. And so there's a couple of things that we need to know before we can make a recommendation of what to do, right? And so we need to know, first of all, we need to find out what it is. So there's a lot of things that are called something that's not exactly what they are. So an example of that in pastures or in row crops would be sickle pod and coffee weed.
Yep.
So we call sickle pod coffee weed a lot of times, but then we have a whole nother plant, a whole different species that is coffee senna, and it is the true coffee weed. But a lot of people call sickle pod that. And so it's very important that we know what the weed is before we start making recommendations. And so when you're taking pictures to send to your county agents, it's important for those pictures to be clear so that we can zoom in on those plants and see what's going on. It needs to be close, but then we also need some that are far away so we can kind of see the size of them, things like that. And then we also want pictures of single plants. So if like in your yard, if you've got 3 or 4 different weeds that are out there, we need to know each one of them. So we don't just need a picture of the yard. We need a little bit of everything, right? Yep. The next thing is what's it in? And so, well, it's in my yard. Okay, well, do you have St. Augustine? Do you have centipede? Do you have Bermuda? Do you have Bahia? You know, it's important to know exactly what it's in because it's going to change the treatment method, right?
Yep.
And then when you start looking at it from an agricultural standpoint, what's it beside? And so, for instance, I had a situation the other day of we had conventional beans planted by extend beans. And so we had a situation where, you know, it gets a little difficult to decide how you're going to treat those situations. Same thing goes with our loans. You know, if we're trying to treat our grass, we have a vegetable garden, we need to know that to try to prevent and mitigate any damage to the crops that we want to keep.
And I know speaking from the standpoint of like you mentioned the different turf grasses we have, the varieties, you know, centipede is going to need a completely different fertility program than some of those other ones. So that could be also lending itself to some of those weed issues, like you were mentioning. You know, if the pH is wrong, that's a good indicator of there needs to be some fertility issue. There could be some fertility issues out there with centipede. It could be over fertilization, which normally happens.
Yep.
With the other ones, it could be under fertilization. So usually, just like with the pictures and stuff, go ahead and get a soil sample. Yep. I would recommend, yep. And go ahead and get it up there to your office. And it doesn't, if you live in a county and you work in another county and you drive by an office a lot closer, it does not matter where you go to take your soil sample. So don't try to break your back trying to get to one county that you live in. You can take it to any of our county offices and we will be happy to help you.
That's right.
Get that.
And we can actually pull up those samples from other offices.
That's
too.
Right. Yep.
The other thing about the different species is there's certain species that are of specifically in turf grass, they're going to be more sensitive to certain chemicals.
Yep.
So what I can spray in a centipede lawn is not what I can spray in a zoysia lawn.
That's right.
And so that's important for us to know that. Now, when you start talking about things like, for instance, ponds, we need to know a couple more things. First of all, we need to know what your goals are. Are we trying to get rid of the temperature? Of the plants, but then we also need to know what is that temperature. And what I mean by that is water temperature and air temperature, because that also changes what we can use in ponds. As far as goals go from that standpoint, we need to know, are we trying to kill the weed, but then are we also trying to keep fish? Or do we not have a lot of fish and we're trying to get a pond ready for that? Because that's also going to change a little bit about what we do. And from that standpoint, when you mentioned the soil samples, we may want to look at doing the water samples in that too, and talk about fertilization. A lot of times with ponds, we get phone calls about them being too clear, or real cloudy or real dirty. And if they're, for instance, if they're real clear, we may have a bigger issue with weeds actually growing in that pond, and we need to find out why it's clear versus, and the way to do that is going to be taking a water sample.
That's right. Clear ponds are not good fish ponds. A Secchi disc, just to briefly, not going into too much, but you can Google Secchi disc, and it's a funky word. It's SECCHI. You can Google that, and it'll actually come up how you work a Secchi disc. But you can find one on Amazon for about $30 if you want to know if you need to fertilize or if there's potential fertility issues. Secchi discs are a great tool, and they're relatively cheap. You can also make your own at home. But you're exactly right, and also making sure, if you're going out there to check your water and you see it's cloudy, like you said, it could have just had a big rainstorm. So there could be other factors that are making it look that way. It might not be that's the consistent look of your pond.
That's right.
So don't freak out if it starts changing on you after a big heavy rain.
That's right. The other thing with weeds, regardless of what crop or commodity or loan it's in, is time of treatment. And so a lot of people are wanting to treat their pastures, their lawns, their ponds right now. And right now is honestly not the best time to treat it.
Yep.
We have some really good pre-emergent options in all of those.
Yep.
But then on the other side of that, it's super hot, and that the heat in general can alter the way some of these chemicals work, and how and also how that crop responds to those chemicals, the stressing out. Things like that, but also the physiology of these plants. Some of them, the way that their entire biological system works, sometimes applying at different times is actually going to make you have better control. So an example of that I think of in pastures is vasi grass. And so, we could technically treat vasi grass. Now is absolutely not the time to treat it. But if we wait until that September time frame where that plant's going to start shutting down, it will take that chemical into those root systems and actually kill it. And so when it comes to weeds, again, regardless of what the crop is, your county agent is going to need pictures. We're going to need those pictures to be clear. They need to be close. They need to be far away. They need to be single plants if you've got multiple plants. We're going to need to know what that weed is in, what what crop, what species, what variety that you got going on. And then we're going to need to know what you got around you. Again, just kind of honing in on some of these things. If we have a vegetable garden, if we have a citrus orchard, if we have a pecan orchard, and then we need to know your goals for whatever you're doing. And also, some of the things are obvious to us, like we think about temperatures and rainfall and things like that might affect the treatment of that. And then again, the time of treatment. So the more information we have as county agents, the better control we can get for whatever problem you have in weeds when it comes to weeds. And so that's really been what I'm seeing the last few weeks. Those questions have very much so picked up, and everybody's wanting to get rid of weeds now. So that's just a few tips to be thinking about when you're trying to determine what, when, and if you need to do something with weeds and whatever you have.
I think that was a good timely update, and I think you're right. I think it is very frequent these days, people calling in. So now we're going to kind of switch gears, and so that was the What's Growing On segment, and I appreciate Savannah for bringing that to us today. Today, the next segment we're going to hit on is our road by road report. And we're going to kind of switch to, last time on the episode, we kind of talked a little bit more on the irrigation side, and we're really thinking about where we're at right now with the crop development and things like that. And now we're going to switch and specifically talk about plant growth regulators. And that's something that we're all, whether you're peanut or cotton, we really talk about a good bit. And this is the time of year that we're kind of thinking about doing some of those things. And I'm going to start with the cotton side, and I'm going to let Savannah kind of touch on the peanuts before we get into our guest here. And so with cotton, I think if you're not one of my growers, you won't probably know this, but cotton's probably one of my favorite crops to work with. I think it's one of the most fascinating crops that we want to grow it, then we want to stop it, then we want to let it grow, and then we want to stop it, then we want to let it grow, and then we want to kill it. Right. And that's kind of how we go about with cotton. And I think it's really cool. The stop start part is what I really want to focus on today, though. For y'all that grow cotton, y'all know this. It's very essential to make sure that we're using plant growth regulators with some of these varieties, especially with some of these newer varieties, because they are an aggressively growing plant. So we want to make sure that we're putting in the right regulators so we can kind of get that fruit development on there. Now, when we think about PGRs, when we're thinking about what we're doing with those, when it comes to cotton, there are several things that we got to think about, different factors that can actually throw plant growth regulators completely off. And timing is one of those things. So we want to make sure that we're doing it in a timely fashion. Environment is the other critical factor there. But along with those two factors, there's a few other ones, such as variety. Like I said, some varieties are extremely aggressive when it comes to growing. The stage of growth your cotton's at when you go out there to apply a plant growth regulator, the anticipated growth of that plant, and then also pest management. All four of those things in combination with the environment and timing are essential to think about. So there are two ways that we can actually influence a plant. And I know if you're growing cotton, you're going to do both of these things. One is timely applications of boron. All right. And that aids with flowering and fruit set. So that's a common, bless you, as a management tool. Growth regulators containing mepiquat are specifically used to reduce the vegetative growth. Now, if that word you might not know of, all right. If you're in the cotton world, you might know it more commonly as PIX. So we're going to PIX the cotton, and that's the active ingredient in PIX. Because of many varieties are hard and fast growing, and they kind of vary. Rules regarding rate and timing of PIX or mepiquat products are not always appropriate. So we really need to. It's a case by case scenario, right? So if you're gonna go out there to your crop and address the PIX concerns or the PGRs out there, you can't necessarily just go based on what your neighbor's doing and do that same rate. It's not going to necessarily work. Fields vary in growth. Weather varies year by year and location, and thus we kind of have to be flexible with what we're doing. So in terms of initiating PGR applications, the decision is much easier in irrigated systems. Now, I know when you get into Southwest Georgia, it's a lot more probably irrigation than Southeast. In my county, I know we don't have as much irrigated fields, so we kind of have to deal with the dry land scenario. But if you do have the ability to irrigate your fields, we kind of recommend starting out with a 4-ounce rate, at least by the second week of squaring, and continue on a 14-day interval for 3 or 4 applications. Another common approach in irrigated conditions, though, is to apply 8 to 12 ounces at first bloom or just prior to bloom, with a subsequent treatment, if needed, at 8 to 12 ounces 2 to 3 weeks later. A lot of times people will hit the boron and the PIX at the same time. It just kind of depends on the system you're in. With aggressive varieties in high yield environments or in fields with a high history of rank growth, this is a recommended approach where you do the 8 to 12 first bloom or prior to bloom, and then 8 to 12 again, because you're hitting it with an aggressive amount all at once. Now, on the flip side, dryland scenarios, though, can be a little bit more tricky, and this is what I deal with a lot more than I do the irrigated when it comes to solving a problem or changing the approach. Because ultimately application prior to a dry spell, or when the crop is extremely stressed, will completely stunt and reduce yield potential in that field. And that's what the game we're playing. And I know if you're out there right now in this time of year for this growing season, it's dry and it's hot. And so not accounting for the weather could really be detrimental into your crop this year. So weather becomes a bigger factor. So I definitely think, trying to do your best to look at the weather to determine when the right time to PIX is definitely something I'd recommend. But then again, around us, it could rain 2 miles beside the field, but never touch that field. So, I mean, it is a very stressful decision to make. Now, lower rates should also be considered in dry land production compared to irrigated. So you can go on the lower end. That being said, in some of the sandier soils, like in my county specifically, you got to take that into consideration, the different soil types. And then also the most common thing I will tell you that we run into in dry land is split fields. All right. So you have some of the field that is at a different stage, or maybe it's grown higher, or maybe you had to replant in some of these scenarios this year, and maybe half the field was replanted, half the field's not, and you kind of have them at 2 different stages. And the best way to approach that situation, in my experience, is depending on your setup and whether or not you're going to be able to do 2 applications, or if you're just going to be able to do 1. It just depends on timing and ability to get out into the field. If you can do 2 applications, you can start with a higher rate of that 12-ounce range, and then hit that 8 ounce in the next go round. Or if you can only go out there once, this is what happened to us 2 years ago. One of my growers, we ended up deciding to go on that 16 to 20 ounce rate just right off the bat, and that's all he did. He only had the opportunity to get out in the field once. So we cut it in half, or we kind of went in that middle range of that 16 to 24, which is the total ounces we recommend. And we hit it with 20 ounces and let it roll. Now, is that the best method? No, but for his situation, that's what we had to do. So just know, if you can't get out in the field, or if you have split fields, there are options. And that is a really good prime example of that case by case scenario. Savannah, do you have anything you want to add on the peanut or the cotton side?
So, for peanuts, it's not a new concept necessarily, right? We've had producers that have done it the last 3 or 4 years, but in our area, we really don't do any of it. So Wade and I have really worked to start incorporating some variety trials in with growth regulator trials with peanuts. And so currently there's only 2 products that are labeled for peanut growth regulators. Both of them are essentially the same product, right? It's just the same chemical. But it's Kudos and Apogee. Currently, our recommendations for those is only on irrigated. We do not recommend a plant growth regulator on our dryland peanuts at all. And so you want to make sure that it's irrigated. This product it's super important to time it right. And so you don't want to apply it until the canopy is 90% lapped for single rows and 100% lapped for twin rows. Sequential applications anywhere from 3.6 to 5.4 ounces, followed by another 3.6 to 5.4 ounces, about 14 days apart is what we're recommending from that. And this is specifically for runner peanuts, which is definitely the largest part, right? I'd say probably 95, 96% of what we have in Georgia. And if they're not that, they're Bullen peanuts. So you're not really too worried about that anyway. If you're going to use Kudos or Apogee, you really want to have a crop oil in there and a nitrogen solution or ammonium sulfate. It helps with the plant uptake and the consistency of the performance of that product. So you're really going to want to make sure you're doing that. I will say it requires 8 hours for absorption.
Gotcha.
So it's a long time that it needs to be dry. And this time of year, we typically have some pop-up thunderstorms. So you really want to pay attention to that. Not recommended on plants that are stressed at all. And when I say stressed, I don't just mean water stress. Disease stress, insect stress. So something like if you got a lot of caterpillars out there, things like that, you want to make sure that plant is not stressed at all. So anyway, we don't necessarily have, as far as Wade and my research goes, don't really have a specific recommendation on varieties, but I will tell you in our area, two of the bigger varieties that you're going to see that could potentially benefit from a plant growth regulator is definitely the 12Ys and then our 16 HOs. But again, we really just want to make sure that those peanuts are irrigated, not just heavy rainfall. We want them irrigated and irrigated well. I will say that you can mix it with your fungicides and insecticides some. Probably would try to leave a crop oil out if I was going to do that. And you do not want to apply it with any fertilizers or herbicides or anything of that nature. So, but, like I said, it's a relatively new concept in peanuts, but we do it every year in cotton, and we have for years and years and years. So I think there's some benefit for us. And as far as our research goes, what we see, maybe not, I wouldn't say the word tremendous, but we do see an increase in yield from those real heavy vine varieties like a 12Y that has received the plant growth regulator application. So it's an opportunity if growers have some of those real viney varieties and think that they might want to do something, especially if it's irrigated. Probably won't hear about it as much this year because it has been relatively dry. But the years that we've been super wet, even on irrigated varieties, we get a lot of calls about it. So,
well, thank you, Savannah. I think that's a good way to end our row by row report for this week. I appreciate your insight on the peanut side. I think that's with our variety selection we've got going on now, and that 12Y picking up in the state. I think kind of sort of is definitely something to kind of look at and definitely understand a little bit more, especially for our irrigated guys. Now, we're going to switch gears because I'm excited for this one. So UGA Extension, we're lucky. We're a lucky group to have knowledgeable agents and specialists when it comes to citrus. One of those agents is here today. We got him his schedule cleared up, and we're lucky to have him. If you've heard of citrus becoming more and more popular, you've probably ran across Mr. Jake Price's name down in Lowndes County in southwest Georgia. And he's like the pioneer agent when it comes to citrus. But our guest today, in my opinion, is what Jake is to southwest Georgia. He is for southeast Georgia. Without further ado, we want to welcome Mr. Aubrey Shirley from Tattnall County, A&R agent, to help us till it like it is when it comes to citrus. So, Aubrey, we want to start the conversation kind of playing a little role play, okay?
Okay.
All right. So, let's pretend I'm a community member in Tattnall County. I just bought their first citrus tree, and I planted it last year.
Mm-hmm.
What should I expect this first year? Am I making enough oranges to make some orange juice, or what am I expecting? Am I just going to have a little bit, like a little taste of it, or should I not even expect anything?
So the first year, if you get it planted in, I don't know, the end of April, middle of April, it'll be really slow. It'll probably take it a month, and then you'll start seeing some growth come on. You need to stake it up, keep it staked up, because when they graft it, they're not really, they haven't been hard. They haven't been hard at all. So they're basically being planted right into the ground, and any kind of wind can tip them over. I learned that the hard way when I planted some, because if you didn't stake them, what happens is they'll fall over. They're pretty strong, but they have to get that. They have to get that lignin growth. They have to get those cells hardened up on the whole way up. And after about the second year, you can take that off. And if you fertilize them well enough, you have good soil, and you water them, that's important. They are drought tolerant, but not the first year. It takes time. You can see probably, I would say, easily a foot or two of growth in the first year. You won't get any oranges. You may have a couple blooms, but definitely take those off. That's going to be really bad on the tree. That's going to be very hard for it. And you may see some yellowing of the leaves if you don't fertilize enough. But I like citrus because I think they're easier. They don't have the pest problems that other trees do. I know they do have their problems. They do have their issues. One I can think of right now is we don't have it yet where we're at that I know of, greening. But right now, if somebody plants in the yard and they don't need to just fertilize. They need to also, they need to protect for insects, because the insect that we're trying to prevent is the citrus Asian psyllid. That is the vector for Wong bean or citrus greening. So growers or homeowners need to make sure that they are not just setting the tree out and leaving it, because what can happen, that can be a harbor for insects that can keep that pest around. So I would be leery of that if I had one tree. Just treat them well.
Now, you mentioned about the greener disease, right? So that's something that Florida's dealt with, right? It's on every continent. Greening is on every continent in the world, obviously, except Antarctica. Can't grow citrus in Antarctica, but it's on every continent, and Florida has thrown a lot of money. They have a lot of good research. Mm-hmm. And greening is a phloem-limiting bacteria, meaning that it goes to the roots. And so once the plant's infected, what happens is it starts to stop up the phloem. When you stop up the phloem, you don't have any nutrients to the roots, no growth. And there's several new papers out there talking about different root stocks, interstalking, that are resistant or tolerant. Resistance is not the right word. They're hesitant to say resistance, but it is tolerant. So meaning that it can survive with greening. How long? I don't think that's necessarily known. But I think that's sort of the push. If we can graft onto desirable fruit plants on the top and get what we need from the rootstock, that may be a way to stop it from getting into Georgia and making a name. Because my fear is it gets into Georgia early, it gets really bad into Georgia, and a lot of growers have put a lot of money and time. And right now, I know it's in the coastal areas. I know it's in the border of Florida. I don't think it's that much in where I'm at. No, I haven't heard of any. We don't have that much where we're at. We are a little cooler. I don't know what the future holds, but I would like to see us work with some people from Florida. But luckily, I'm excited to do some work. I think a lot of other people are, because for Georgia, any research that we do is totally new, because new fertilization techniques. How do we fertilize? Florida's recommendations. I've talked to growers, and they say they think it's too much. We're putting too much fertilizer. And so any kind of work that we can do would help us out a lot.
So you have some research at the onion farm, right? Tell us a little bit about what you're doing from that standpoint.
Well, I did it. I did it at first because I didn't really know much, and the only way to do it is the old 4-H motto: learn by doing. That's the way I did it. So I just planted some trees.
Plug for 4-H.
Me and Ross Green, he helped me, and we just got some trees. I didn't know what to plant, so I got some. We planted on. I think it's Rich 16.6. I planted Caracaras. This was in 20. I think this is in 21. I don't know, 20 or 21. I think it was 21 because it was after COVID. I do remember that we planted that summer after COVID. The next summer, we planted some Caracaras, some Kishues, and some Satsumas. And I wanted to see what would happen. It did pretty good. Like I said, I had to put irrigation out there. And at that time, Andrew Sawyer, he's the Southeast District pecan agent. He had got a grant to dig a well. So I asked him, hey, could I use some of your water? Because I know they don't use as much water. He said, yeah, that's okay. So we dug a trench. We installed the irrigation ourselves, dug a trench, installed the irrigation, and got it going. At first, we had to use a nurse tank because the well wasn't hooked up. So we nurse tanked all the trees. It was very, very intensive. Took a lot of time, but you learn a lot. Learned about weed control. Learned about all the different aspects of it, and learned that it is tough. And the thing that I'm learning this year and after that is how to get the fruit. So we've got a lot of fruit this year. Probably since that cold a couple of years ago set us back. So we're probably looking at the true third year of growth because we died back a lot. So we're going to see. I've actually talked to the GCI, the Georgia Correctional Industries, and they think they can help me harvest some of the fruit because there's going to be a lot. So that's where I'm at right now. And I've planted 2 years ago. I planted 20 sugar bells.
Yep.
Planted those.
I remember you saying.
And that same year was the cold, and they got nicked back a pretty good bit. I lost a few of those, and so I've got room to expand, and I've got room above. I've probably got another acre I can expand on. So that's where I'm at right now. I want to do some new stuff. I would like to do some rootstock stuff. I've actually got 14. I've got 14 new trees. They're the Australian finger limes. Mm-hmm. Dr. Dutt in Florida, he is a breeder, and I
think those are so cool.
He let me he gave me 14 trees, so we're going to see. They're not supposed to be cold hardy, but a lot of people have said that, and I have seen my trees be very cold hardy. Granted, 2 years ago it was unusually cold, but I've been down in the 20s. My trees have fared well. Very little, as long as they're dormant, they do very well. So I'm excited to see how these do because I've heard that they're pushing them in Florida as sort of a specialty crop.
Yep.
Because they're very small. They're about as big as your thumb, and you can crack them open, and they look really cool. They call them caviar, caviar lime or lime caviar or something like that. But they're very cool. So I want to expand and do some more stuff. I'd love to do some rootstock stuff. I would love to do some fertilization stuff because I think in Georgia, especially where we're at, it would be really cool because we have heavier soils. Yep. Some guys, they plant in the flatwoods. So, do they really need as much fertilizer as what they're calling for? We'll know. I don't know. We'll see.
I think finger limes, if y'all have never had a finger lime or seen a finger lime, they do look like caviar when you open them. And they're not as sour.
They're not.
They have they have a true lime taste. They're really good. They're a really cool citrus fruit.
And since we're colder too, a lot of times the cold temperatures are what pushes us to be sweeter. Because I've talked to some growers, they had grapefruits that had a Brix of up to 13 or 14. That's on par with sweet corn. So if we have cooler temperatures, some of our fruit may actually get sweeter than a little south of us.
And Brix is a measurement of sugar content. Is that
yes, right? I think the way it works is you put it in this little. Well, I know how it works. You put it in there, and it refracts. I think light refracts in there, and that's how you get your measurement of Brix. I think that's how that works. I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, they do a lot of Brix. If you're a wine snob, they do a lot with Brix when it comes to muscadines and other grapes and things like that. So if y'all have heard of Brix, we use Brix a lot when it comes to fruit production in general and sweet corn, like you said, Aubrey. All right, last question. If you had to pick your favorite variety of orange that we could grow in our area, what would it be?
I don't know, because there's so many that I haven't ate. I've heard a lot of good things about the Sharonouis,
Okay.
and I want to try Sharonouis. I would like to see how they taste. Honestly, I like the Kishues because they're really small. Satsumas taste good. Caracaras are good. Basically, anything that's sweet. Grapefruits are okay.
I'm not a grapefruit fan. I mean, they're too bitter for me, but some people like them.
I don't know. I like the citrus. I think citrus are really cool, the way they grow and just sort of the history behind them. They're very old. I mean, they've been cultivated for thousands of years in Asia, and they've just come over here. I mean, Florida's been doing it for.
What about lemons? Do you do much with lemons?
No, the only thing with lemons, I think UGA has a pink frost lemon. I don't know how cold hardy they are. I don't think they're as cold hardy as, I mean, obviously Satsumas can get down in prime conditions to like 12 degrees.
Wow.
But that's prime. That's probably when it's cold. That's probably when it's dormant. The tree is dormant and it can't survive that long. But I don't really have a favorite. I really like all the citrus.
Well, I do really appreciate you being here and sharing some of that knowledge with us and some of your expertise. I do love the idea of this emerging industry in Georgia as another cool avenue people can go into. I know it's very popular of a conversation piece in our neck of the woods. So thank you for providing some of your expertise and guidance on that.
So if you're interested in finding out more about the citrus production in the state and then in this southeastern Georgia area, Aubrey actually is doing a citrus update on August the 9th at the Onion Farm. Now, will that be like a field day? Will you go see yours, or is it more your classroom setting?
Well, we'll do what I've done in the past is I'll talk just a few minutes, just say who I am, what we've been doing, and we have Jake Price is coming. He's the Lowndes County. I think he's considered the state agent in citrus. So I got him. I've got Dr. Jonathan Oliver. He's the pathologist, and I've got a guy. I'm hoping the guy from UF, Dr. Mangel. I think I'm saying it's Dr. Mangel Dutt. He's going to speak, because he's doing a lot of cool stuff with genetics, and I would like people in Georgia to sort of know what's going on, because Florida is working on it. And I think it would be great if we can use some of their stuff, their techniques, what they're doing to sort of. I would like to see Georgia not have the issue, build off of what other people have done, because if they can do that, we can be set. I think we can be in a good shape, because everybody's worried about, can citrus grow here in Georgia? It's so far north, but the USDA has moved all the hardiness zones up one. So technically where we're at now is in 9A. That's where Florida was just a few years ago. So, I mean, if they could grow it there, then we can grow it here now. I don't see why it'll be a problem. Good.
Well, so if you're interested in attending that, make sure to call the Tattnall County Extension Office and register for it. I think Evans County is listed on the flyer too. Right. So, and if you need help getting in touch with them, they can contact their local agent, and we can get you guys in touch with Aubrey or Ross.
And this is open to any. I mean, any agents can come. Agents too. So if you have if agents in the county and their county have citrus, they're more than welcome to come and bring whoever.
Good. And then we've got a couple other updates coming up. We've talked about several times at this point. The Georgia Cotton Commission, that's July the 24th. Is it going to be posted after that?
Yeah.
Okay. So just, you can cut that out, right? Yeah. Okay. Are you going to cut it out?
I might. We'll see. We'll play by.
So the Midville Field Day, that's August the 7th. Again, that's my absolute favorite event. You're not going to get any better. In the next couple of episodes, you'll actually hear from Anthony Black about Midville Field Day and the history of it and what to expect for this year. So you guys stay tuned for that information. In the meantime, if you want to get registered, you can actually go to the Emmanuel County Extension Facebook page, and there is a link to registration for that. So make sure that you get registered to attend Midville Field Day. And then you heard from Andrew a couple weeks ago. He's got his pecan field day on August the 28th in Blackshear. And so if you're interested in that, you can either contact Andrew or shoot a message or question to your county extension office to get more information on that. So I think for right now, that's the majority of the big events that we have. Now we have, you always want to make sure you're keeping up with your local office because some of those events will be coming up. We've got what we call end of the year meetings or crop harvest meetings in some counties. Those are going to be coming up soon, and some other things. So just stay in touch with us, for one, from the podcast, because we do try to advertise those events as they come, but then also stay caught up with your county agent to see what's going on in your county. So
thank you for that, Savannah. Before we sign off, if you were paying attention to last week, we do have a special question for Mr. Shirley here, and he doesn't know that he's about to get asked this, and so we're going to see if he has an answer, because, like I said, there's only one answer I know of, so we're going to see if he knows it. All right, Aubrey, you're the citrus guy. What rhymes with orange?
It's like purple. Nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing I know of.
Nothing you know of. All right, so we're still staying with door hinge as the only answer that we know of.
Door hinge does not rhyme with orange.
Door hinge.
No.
No. We're going to table it. If y'all want to send us messages with your vote, if you can come up with something.
Well, if you got hinge, then you also have to have cringe.
Now you're just stretching it out. You know what I'm saying? We don't listen.
And it's kind of cringy that you think hinge and orange.
Man, y'all weren't brought up in some of the TV shows I grew up in. That was the ongoing joke. Door hinge was the answer. But I guess the mystery's still out. The verdict's still out on that. Thank you for trying to give us an answer there, Aubrey. I appreciate it. I know I put you on the spot. But we appreciate Aubrey for joining us. Like Savannah mentioned, our next episode will be featuring Mr. Anthony Black, and he is probably one of the most knowledgeable individuals I've ever met when it comes to farming and one of our research farms. So he's an excellent farm manager, but also just an individual to share some of the story Midville has and what Midville Field Day actually has to offer. So we're looking forward to that. That'll be in the next episode. So tune in next time to find out that and a lot more. But until then, just keep telling it like it is.